Fix that, thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How is everyone?
Awake and ready.
I asked you to come forward for several reasons. And it's interesting, but we only get, at the beginning of service, we only receive back what we put forward. I asked because it was a small group, but also because there's a power. The topic today is concentration. The topic today is concentration. And if we scatter our energy all over, how can we experience concentration? So I'm going to ask one more time, please follow the seats to the front. Why come here if we're not going to participate in an experience? Come, please, move forward. Because you'll experience a substantial difference. The church stands here as a representative of God's light. And, it's easy to be very tepid in our aspiration and think that we're doing something. Thank you, Anita. That's beautiful. Very nice.
Yay.
But what happens when we actually engage, when we dynamically put ourselves into a position? Can somebody, Ken, can you come up and help with the chair here? Somebody? Make a little bit. And somebody's shoes need to move there, I think.
Watch your toes.
Yeah. What happens when we dynamically engage deliberately?
Nice.
We change the story, we change the experience. And this little effort right here, this little gesture, is about changing the experience that we have for a few minutes in this room. But how we do one thing is how we do everything. How we do one thing really is how we do everything. And if we're dissatisfied, I'm hoping that everybody in this room is here because there's some level of dissatisfaction in their lives. They're trying to adjust. There's something, if anybody here is walking on water, if anybody here is absolutely living in joy all the time, can we trade places? But if you're not, and you come in and you make half-hearted efforts, you make lukewarm gestures, why would you expect to change? Why would you expect something different? The Masters all come to tell us that the presence of God is universally and without exception present in every atom, throughout all creation, under every circumstance, equally. That there is no moment you will ever be closer to God's joy, ever closer to God's love than you are right this minute. In fact, Yogananda went so far as to say, he described his teachings, he called them self-realization, and he described them. Self-realization is the knowing in every part of body, mind, and soul that you are now in the possession of the kingdom of God. That God's omnipresence is your omnipresence. That you have it already. You need not pray that it come to you. That all you need to do is improve your knowing. That's it. And then the spiritual path is all the tools that help us to improve our knowing. That's all. Concentration is one of the keys, the absolute center pins of spiritual success. I was having fun yesterday. Had a rare morning of no compelling engagements. It was very, very fun. I realized it, and I got up and I meditated out in the living room, and I pulled out 2 different versions of the Bible, and I had a whole bunch of different other readings from Yogananda and Kriyananda, and I meditated, I had my own board there, and I just had a great meditation. And then it was over, and I've learned that when meditation's over, the best thing I can do much of the time is just simply acknowledge it and get up and do the next thing. Often it helps to go past your first impulse to end a meditation and go deeper and concentrate more powerfully. But sometimes it just helps to just get up. So I got up and I went and I had my little cup of coffee, and then I went outside and I looked down, and there's a concrete patio outside of our house. And I looked down and I realized, it really hadn't been cleaned since it was installed about 2 years ago. Really, kind of hosed off nicely with broom and some. So I pulled out the hose. And I was in the back of my mind, I was just kind of ruminating on today's talk, and I've got the hose out and I'm trying to wash off all the dirt. And so what am I doing? I'm adjusting the concentration of the flow of the water. It's great how one thing works, everything works. So I'm there and I'm adjusting it, and I get it really concentrated, and boy, I'm laser beam and I'm just doing it. And I'm missing a whole lot of stuff, right? The stuff that I'm moving moves really fast, but so I adjusted it a little broader, and then I got it too broad and nothing was happening. Everything was just getting wet and staying right where it was. And I realized that it's not enough concentration. One saint said, the mind is a moving thing. It is a moving thing. Concentration is not fixity of the mind because you can't do it. Concentration is the fixity of purpose that brings the mind back over and over and over again to the same point of reference. And I've looked back, I was just reflecting on the spiritual path of my own life for about the last 30-some years. And how, when I have allowed life to compel a significant response, if we're fortunate, and we all will be fortunate at one time or another, life will come and insist on things, on us responding. We will come up with a major illness. We'll come up with the death or the injury of a loved one. We'll end up with a car crash or a trauma. We'll end up with things that compel a response. And really, there are two different things we can do. If we're kind of going along and life's kind of going like this, and this is the demands of life, and this is our response, we're just kind of doing this, and all of a sudden the demands of life go like this. One of two things will happen. We will either lift our energy and match this, or reach toward matching the compulsions of life, or we'll just drop our energies down to our toe chakras and nothing. We just go into depression. We go into a dearth of energy. And every time I've seen that I have allowed the circumstances of life to increase my energy, increase my focus, increase my concentration, without exception, my experience of life has become richer. The power of spirit, the power of creativity, the power of life has flowed through me in ways that before that I hadn't been able to imagine, and which were so infinitely satisfying. They also helped solve the issues at hand. We can use anything that comes to us as a device for increasing our focus, increasing our concentration, increasing our engagement. There's a sweet story. I love India. By the way, for those who don't know, we're going to India next October, a year from this October, for a month pilgrimage to go deep into the vibration of that ancient land, to draw on these great and subtle teachings directly. That was a word from our sponsor. Now we're back to main programming. But India has held these sacred understandings for the last several thousand years and held them in trust on behalf of mankind. There's a great story from India, and Krishna stands there on behalf of God in this world. So he's the Eastern Christ. And he has just had to, because he was a warrior and it was a darker age, he's just had to kill somebody. And it was his arch enemy. And his arch enemy has been plaguing him, and he has been just turning a blind eye to it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. He has been insulted by this man. He has been attacked by this man. He always just manages to just brush it off. And finally, the 1,000th time comes, and he ends up cutting off his head. And this great light is given off by his passing. And he's the man, the guy who just died, has been a bit of a curmudgeon. He was a king, and he was a bit of a unkind guy. But this great light goes out, and nobody can understand what's going on. And they start to celebrate his passing, and Krishna says, a great soul has just left. And then he goes on to tell the story that this was actually a nearly liberated soul who did something really, really stupid. Anybody here feel like you're getting really close and then you look up and you just did something really stupid and then you realize there's this whole thing to have to make up? Well, that's what happened. And Krishna, in that life, gave him the opportunity. He says, you can come back to kind of get this karma washed through you. You can come back 7 times as my greatest devotee. Or you can come back 3 times as my greatest enemy. Think about that. What would you choose? Would you come back as the greatest devotee, but come back more times? Or would you come back as the greatest archenemy of that which you really love and are devoted to? It doesn't make sense. One of the great things about real spiritual teachings is they don't fit within the box of our convenient understanding. And that would have to be true if you think about it, because if they did, we'd already be liberated. If we already understood, we'd already be there. We'd already be living in the absolute joy of God all the time. So he came back as the archenemy, and this was the final moment of his final liberation, and that's why this great light went out, and the karma was redeemed, and he was set free. There are so many elements to this that are worth talking about, and not for today. But just, we don't understand how it really looks. We don't understand how it really works. We don't understand what's really going on much of the time. What looks terrible is often the greatest blessing. What looks great is often the worst curse. But in terms of concentration, it's very interesting, because it was the power of concentration that was going to set him free. And in being the worst enemy, think about the thing you really hate the most. Think about the person who's really just pissed you off more than you can stand. Think about the circumstance of your life and what do? It just won't let you go. It's just in there grinding away. So the mind is constantly fixed. Well, if Krishna, if God is the greatest enemy, your mind is constantly fixed on God. It cannot help but have a liberating effect. And it's the power of concentration. You have to understand what we concentrate on. What we concentrate on is what sets us free. If we don't concentrate, if the mind just skitters across the thoughts of this world and the experiences of this world randomly, nothing happens. We get a little bit of karma over here, and a little bit over there, and a little bit over there, and nothing really ever changes very much. And random things come and sweep us side by side and around through our lives. But with deep, deep concentration, we have the power to change virtually anything in very short order. These are a couple of the great investments of your life if you wish to make them. This one is scientific healing affirmations, and this one is metaphysical meditations. If you don't have them, they're, I don't know, this one was $1.95 when I got that one. I think it was a while ago. This one's $6.50. I think they may be even $7 or $8 now. But word for word, pound for pound, dollar for dollar, these things are probably the best investments you can ever make, or very close, along with the other things that we've got out there. But he's talking about affirmation. In this one, it's scientific healing affirmations. And he's talking about the power of affirmation. He talks about how to do it, why it works. And then he talks about when you should do it. You should use affirmations immediately upon awakening. He says, words are the power of spirit in man. Spoken word is the power of spirit in man. And that words without concentration, without focus and attention, are just like empty husks without the corn. But words, this is actually from the very beginning. It says, man's word is spirit in man. Spoken words are the sounds occasioned by the vibrations of thoughts. Thoughts are vibrations sent forth by the ego or by the soul. Every word you utter should be potent with soul vibration. A man's words are lifeless if he fails to impregnate them with the spiritual force. And then he goes on, talkativeness, exaggeration, or falsehood make your words as ineffective as paper bullets shot from a toy gun. Man's words should represent not only truth, but also definite understanding and realization. Words saturated with sincerity, conviction, faith, and intuition are like highly explosive vibration bombs which set off, shatter the rocks of difficulties and create the change desired. Period. Just that simple. The thoughts we have give utterance to the words we use, which create a vibrational change in the world. Yogananda's guru said, The paths of all men are dark with many shames. Everything in future will improve if you're making the right spiritual effort now. This is the right spiritual effort. These are the things, the application of concentration, the application of yearning and devotion and aspiration and service and self-control and being willing to hear and respond and then to not belittle what you've been given. Those are the keys that will set us into another experience of life. Remember, God's presence is right here, right now. You can't get closer. All you can do is improve your knowing, responsiveness, moving closer to the light, saying yes. I remember years ago, I was in really dire straits. And the first time you experience something and you realize it really works, registers vividly. I've used these many times since then, but I remember the first time. It was New Year's Eve, and I was in a very unpleasant circumstance, and I didn't know what to do about it. And I just wrote, I offer this up to you. And it was New Year's Eve, and I just wrote it probably 30 or 40 times, maybe 100 times. But I did it with really deep concentration. I just give this to you. I don't know what it's supposed to do. I don't understand. You fix it. I swear to God, within 6 weeks, the entire thing, and it was one of those immutable circumstances that you just can't change. Within 6 weeks, everything was different. Everything was different. Now, I have to admit, in this particular case, it was different in a way I hadn't expected. It was different in a way I wasn't really all that eager to cooperate with, but it was different. And I was wise enough not to fight it. And I found across the intervening 30 years that it's been one of the most significant blessings of this entire life. It informs my daily understanding even today. We are so privileged. We are so privileged to have access to real teachings, to have access to those who actually have lived in the presence of God, and whose only interest in being in this world was to make that pathway clear to us, to support us in our efforts to find the only fulfillment we've ever sought, anybody's ever sought, across all eternity, and to make that available to us here in this life. This is from Whispers from Eternity, Yogananda's book of prayer demands and poems. He said this was a scripture that he was born to write and give to mankind, and it basically covers every human condition. But this is the practice this is the prayer before practicing concentration. So let's sit up straight. Let's take a deep breath in. Inside, feel for the yearning that you have for wholeness. You have for real love, for real joy. Independent of circumstance. We want a love and a joy that aren't flavored by age or disease or pain or sorrow. We want it no matter what's going on, and that's what's offered. So feel for that inside and realize that the key to it, a key, is the power of concentration. Teach me, O Spirit, by meditation. It's number 17 if you have the book. By meditation, to stop the storm of breath, the skipping of my mental restlessness, and all the sensory disturbances that rage on the lake of my mind. Let the magic wand of my intuition halt the gale of passions and unnecessary desires. In the rippleless lake of my mind, then, let me behold the undistorted reflection of the moon of my soul, glistening ever with the reflected light of thy presence. We'll have music.